Good morning and welcome to Truck Weight Analysis Weight Distribution Fundamentals. My name is John McLean and I'm a Digital Marketing Executive at TruckScience. So, weight analysis is fundamental to good truck design. This webinar is for people with an interest in vehicle weight management who would like to learn more about using the TruckScience Axle Weight Calculator. When we think of good truck design, there are many considerations to take into account. Let's take a quick look at some of these considerations. We need to consider the regulations in the state or states in which the truck will be operated. These regulations vary depending on the number of axles, axle spacings, tires, and more. We need to comply with OEM ratings, including gross vehicle weight rating, gross axle weight ratings, etc. We need to ensure that axle weight distribution supports steering and braking ability, for example, by ensuring that a significant portion of the total weight is carried on the front axle. We usually have the goal of maximizing payload capacity. We want to right-size the truck both to reduce capital cost and reduce fuel consumption. We want to avoid undue maintenance or rework, or indeed invalidating the vehicle warranty. We want to be mindful of rollover stability by keeping the center of gravity as low as possible. Turning radius becomes important. For example, a garbage truck that will need to turn in a residential area. There are a lot of other considerations too, including site infrastructure, driver needs, and internal standards stipulated by your organization. But in general, those are some of the things we need to bear in mind when laying out a vehicle, and we will cover them directly or indirectly in the live demo in just a moment. So this webinar will be a basic introduction to the TruckScience Axle Weight Calculator for people who are pretty new to the tool and a refresher for those who are a little rusty. Even regular users may pick up a few tips. We'll cover how to calculate axle weights and center of gravity. We'll check compliance against OEM ratings, state regulations, and your organization's own internal best practice guidelines. I'll help you realize your vehicle's payload potential. I'll show you how to use the TruckScience library of product specs and how to have something added to it. I'll also explain the options for having your own products added to it. I'll show you how to share your designs with other users of the app and how to generate a sign-off document with true-to-life drawings and customize with your own logo. And lastly, I'll show you where to find help if you do get stuck. So I'll just pop into the live demo now. Okay, so to choose a calculation or to start a new calculation, we must first choose a vehicle. So I'm going to choose a Ford from the manufacturer's specs. I'll go for a Ford Super Duty 4x4, and we can search here. So I'll search for 550 regular, and we can sort by CA, and I'll do that, and I'll select this Ford here. So this is an 84-inch CA to accommodate an 11-foot service body. So the information we see here, the drawing, dimensions, chassis weights, axle ratings, etc., has been sourced from the Ford Bodybuilder portal. We have a data team who are constantly adding and updating vehicle specs in the library. So just a few pointers before I carry on. So on the left-hand side of the screen here, we can input a vehicle, a body, equipment, and payload information. Down here at the dashboard, to verify compliance with the manufacturer's ratings, regulation limits, and our own organization's internal standards, and display our favorite measurements. The weights table here to see detailed weight distribution and compliance information, and to determine maximum achievable payload. Because this vehicle does not yet have a body, the auto-calculated maximum payload figure here now is 0. The right-hand side here, we'll switch views and examine outputs, and along the top, we can print, save, and share our calculations and define our preferences for using the program. So let's start adding components. So when deciding to add an item as a body, equipment, or payload, consider the following guidelines. A body has payload capacity, whereas equipment does not. Equipment is permanently attached to the vehicle, whereas payload is loaded on and off. Let's add a body using the second icon on the left. So we can click Add a Body here. As with the vehicle library, the tool has a library of body specs, again with drawings, dimensions, weights, etc. So you can choose from these predefined categories, or if you can't find your body, you can go for the other category. You can search the public library for preloaded standard bodies. So I could pick a service body here, and I could go for, let's say, a Reading. And see how the body is loaded onto the vehicle. We can click on that body then. Since this is a standard spec from Reading, a regular user does not have permission to edit dimensions, but rather just weights and center of gravity. As you can see, the length, height, and width are all grayed out, whereas the center of gravity fields are editable. An upfitter may choose to use a standard body like this, whereas a body manufacturer might like to experiment with body design. We provide templates for this, and I'll get to that in just a moment. Note that body manufacturers who wish to make their bodies available in the program can choose to make them available to all users or just approved distributors. So we found this Reading body in the public library, so I'll just remove it now. This time we'll use a TruckScience template. So we'll go back over here to body, service body, and pick the first one there, which is template. Templates have a more generic drawing, but offer greater flexibility in terms of what you can edit. So in contrast to the Reading body, you can see that all this is now editable. They also come with sensible default values for weights and dimensions. So now would be a good time, I suppose, to point out the color-coded indicators beneath the drawing. So the compliance scorecard on the bottom left flags any non-compliance with manufacturer's ratings, bridge weights, or our own organization's internal standards. Everything is green so far, so all is good. So let's open the settings dialog to customize our dashboard. So we can see here the regulations applied to our design. So we can scroll through all of them there. So we can select up to 5 at once, but I'll just choose Texas, state roads. And our favorite measurements here, you can see that I've already selected gross weight on vehicle front and the vertical center of gravity overall. You can choose whatever you like there. We also define our own internal organization standards in the settings dialog. These are limits that may not be covered by regulations or the OEM spec for the vehicle, but which your organization has put in place with the aim of delivering safe and efficient vehicles. An example of this is to specify a minimum of 20% weight on the front axle to ensure that the vehicle can be steered and stopped safely. These can be toggled on and off with these checkboxes on the left. I'll just say OK to that. Okay, so the weights table here shows the breakdown of weights per component in the rows, and across axles in the columns. It also shows the maximum achievable payload for the current setup, this figure highlighted in blue. The unused capacity row shows any capacity that is being left on the table, so to speak. When the total column shows a utilization of 100%, you know that you're realizing the total payload potential of the vehicle. Blue text in the weights table or the drawing indicates a clickable shortcut. Shortcuts open the menu on the left. Shortcuts open the menu on the left at the relevant attribute. For example, if we click on body length there. And we can also pop this out to make adjustments to it. So as I make adjustments to this, you'll notice that the weights table updates on the fly. But I can just change the length here to say 133. And we'll change the height to 38 inches. And we can update the material weight. which is 120 pounds per square foot now, but we'll change that to 91. Reducing the weight, this can also be expressed as an absolute measurement in pounds, but reducing the weight of the body increases the maximum achievable payload. So currently, if that's 91, if I say reduce that to 88, you can see the payload has increased. So I can actually undo that easily here with this undo button. Okay, so we can add some equipment to this body or add to this vehicle. So I'll add this equipment on the left-hand side. I'll go over here and I'll add a crane. I'll go for a lift more. 4,000. Okay. And just keep an eye here on the weights table as I drag this crane into position. You'll notice the distribution of weight over the axles is changing. I'll just pop it on the end there. Okay, next we can add a generator. So I'll go back to equipment over here, hit the plus symbol, and then go down to other. And I'll go for a Lincoln generator. Okay, so we can actually position this generator as we did before, or we can position it by clicking into it, hitting the position heading, and we can position it from the back of the cab here, we'll say 4 inches. Above below the chassis, we'll go for 26 inches. And you see there it's positioned at 4 us. If you would prefer to specify its position relative to the front axle, you could change that in preferences here as well. I'll go back here and I'll just specify the weight of this as well. So I'll change it to 432. And we'll specify the horizontal center of gravity to 45%, meaning 45% of the distance from the front to the rear generator. Note that this may be specified as an absolute measurement as well in inches. To see a detailed position and dimension attributes, we can pin it as well. So I click that again, hit the pin, you can see more detail there. I'll just undo that. Water. If one of the axles had shown a utilization of 100% and the other significant unused capacity, this represents an opportunity to gain payload by moving some items around. So let's temporarily exaggerate the weight of this generator. So I'm going to put up the weight of this generator to 4,000 pounds. As an example. So the front axle is now overloaded with the utilization score of around 104%, but the rear has unused capacity there of about 50%. Shifting the generator towards the back results in a more even utilization spread, and we can see that payload figure now has gone to about 3,500, and we've reached that holy grail of getting 100% in our total utilization. So as you've seen, information is input on the left-hand side, where you'll find the output here is on the right-hand side. So now we can actually go to, say, top view and see the top of the body. And we can click into that, and we could actually change the compartment depth. So we'll change that to 25 inches. 25 inches either side. And we can shift this crane curbside and the generator roadside. And then I go back to side view. Just before I move on, I better actually just undo that 4,000 weight for the generator. Okay, so now we have a proposal to agree with our drafting technician, with the customer, sorry. So this vehicle, the GVWR is 17,500 and our payload capacity is 7,200. So we'll send this design to our drafting technician to get a more realistic body drawing for our customer sign-off document. So you can do that by clicking the share button, and you have to save the calculation first. So I'll just save this as webinar 2025. And here you can enter the email address of the drafting technician that you'd like to share it with. Okay, let's move on. So say after some time has elapsed and we receive our drawing back from our drafting technician, we can replace the body template with that drawing. So I'll just get rid of this drawing and we'll import our DXF. So we go back to import our body. I'll go down here to other and import DXF. I have one prepared here. Okay, that looks good. So we click next. You can position it on the XY axis. I won't need to do that here. So we can specify its length. Its length, I'll give it 133. The height, the longitudinal height would be 5 inches. The total height has been scaled off the drawing, so we won't need to touch that. So for our width, we'll go for 94 inches. That height, everything's okay. Yeah. Then I'll click next. I'll go to the body weight. We'll go for 997 pounds. And for the horizontal center of gravity, we'll go for 45% again. And I'll click next. And then we'll go save and add. So webinar 25 again, save and add. And I'll just drag that down, sorry. Okay, I'll just pop back into full screen there. So we'll go back to this imported body, and if we wanted to, we could save this to our team library, so that colleagues could reuse it in the future. Or if we go down to advanced options, we could save it to the distributor library so that a list of users that you control can add it to their calculations to make it available to all TruckScience users. Choose share to public library. That's out of that. Okay, now up to now we've been using simple or evenly distributed payload with the optimal maximum payload of 7,200-ish. So let's add some user-defined point loads by switching to a detailed payload. So we can do this on the left-hand side here, and we can switch to detailed payload, and we can go to our generic payload template. And we'll just give it some specifications. So for our position, we'll just position it, say, 2 inches from the headboard, 2 inches below the floor, and 2 inches from the sidewall. And our specifications, so our length, we'll give 30 inches, our height, 32, and our width, 23. Okay, and our weight, I'll say 7. Well, let's say, for instance, we did 7,000 for the weight. If we did that accidentally, let's just see out of curiosity what would happen. Okay, so we see we have run into some compliance issues there. So the scorecard flags issues with manufacturer's ratings. The weights table shows the front axle of the total weight and the total vehicle weight has been exceeded. So let's review where the front axle limit comes from. So we'll click on the permissible here. And we can see here that the maximum permitted weight for the permitted weight for this axle is 6,000 pounds, which is derived from the lesser of the GAWR of 6,000 pounds and the bridge limit of 20,000 pounds. In this case, the GAWR is the lesser. So upgrading the axle can sometimes make this problem go away. So we could upgrade that to 8,000 and it does go away. However, because we did see earlier we could achieve a maximum payload of over 7,000 pounds, I'll just undo that change and we can see if we can address the compliance issues by dragging this back towards the rear. So as I drag it back towards the rear, You can see we reach a sweet spot there where no axles are overloaded. If I go too far back, we can see that indeed the rear axle is overloaded. So I'll just hit the undo again to undo that change. So remember that these are shortcuts as well. So to save a bit of time, I can go back to this payload figure here and just undo that 7,000 weight and put it back to 750. Okay, so we'll add a trailer now. So we'll go back to equipment. I'll have to add a hitch first. So we'll go to sample tow hitch. That's it there. And I'll just drag that down a little bit. And we'll add our trailer. So we'll go for center axle drawbar. And we'll add one with a beaver tail. Okay, and we can actually put some payload on top of this as well. So I'll specify the payload and trailer as detailed, and we'll put a bobcat on it. Okay, you can see now we've got our tongue weight there. Our hitch load is expressed as a percentage of total trailer weight. So you see I can drag this bobcat to increase or decrease that tongue weight. It's changing there. Okay, we can center the bobcat laterally as well if we go back to our top view. And go back to side view again. So you can explore these views in detail in your own time, but let's have a quick look at them now. So our overview here has a detailed breakdown of the vehicle and laden weight. Notice that some of the components are exerting negative weight on the front axle, but the front axle is carrying 40% of the total vehicle weight. This is not a problem. So we'll go to bridge then. Compares the actual gross weight on each axle group with permissible weights as per bridge law. Center of gravity view. We can review the center of gravity points, including overall center of gravity, and you can pin any of them that are of interest. So I could pin the crane there. And we can go to turn radius. This is the smallest circle in which the truck can turn. And there's also notes and warnings down here as well. So if you wanted to take a look at them, for instance, the static rollover angle of the vehicle. And I'll just go back to summary view and back to side view. Okay, so if you wanted to export one or more views to a PDF document customized with your logo, what you can do here is you can click the PDF icon on the top here. The PDF includes, just give it a second. The PDF includes, as you can see here, a sign-off area. You can choose to print, download, or email this directly with your customer. You can choose different views that you would like shown in the settings area. So I can go to reports, and you can choose all the different ones you'd like to include in your report, such as bridge view, center of gravity view, turning radius. Okay, if you need any help at any stage, we've got our live chat at the bottom right. And you can schedule a screen share session for more assistance if you need. Back there. At this point, I might just ask Martin if there's any questions that I can address.
Yeah, thanks, John. There are 3 questions so far, and maybe we'll start with the question about adding CNG or LNG tanks and how the weight of those is factored into the say chassis weight. And I can just explain that, and maybe John, you can just go to the vehicle menu and show the fuel or the on the vehicle menu on the left, and just go to energy source. Here you'll see on the drop down, you could, for example, change that to CNG or LNG. We don't need to do that now, but you can either, that is obviously for the actual fuel itself in the tanks. Now, the CNG and LNG tanks themselves are normally very heavy and can either be specified as part of the chassis weight by the manufacturer. So maybe, John, if you just go to weights and axles and maybe the front axle,
Yeah.
you'll see there's an override option there for the chassis weight. So if the manufacturer provides a chassis weight with the tanks, you can obviously revise that weight. The other option would be to add tanks as additional equipment. If you go to other equipment there, John,
Uh,
and yeah, so you can just go to the other equipment menu. So you could add, you could go to add and go to other equipment and then either search for for example, fuel tank. In this case, we do have some fuel tanks that you can add, or you can use the DXF import feature to add your own CNG or LNG tank, or you can just do a template to spec out your own tanks there and then give them the weight that they have. So that's maybe for CNG and LNG tanks. So it's really up to you whether you put the weight into the chassis weight or whether you add it as additional equipment and add it onto the chassis weight. Then there was a question about battery packs as well. Is it possible to add or remove battery packs? Again, the manufacturer of a battery electric vehicle will typically provide the chassis weights with the battery pack. So if you wanted to remove weight from the vehicle, you could again just update the front and rear chassis weights, as John just pointed out there. If you want to add a battery pack, you can again, maybe John, just go to other equipment. There are some battery packs there. If you search for under other equipment, you can just search for battery and you'll see there are a few options there. Maybe just take that second one. That's the 15 kilowatt hour battery, and you can just add that to the vehicle and you'll see it will give it a weight and a specific the right graphic. You can move that to the side of the chassis. You can even update the weight for that. So again, it's really up to you whether the battery weight is included in the chassis weight or whether you use other equipment to add it on to the chassis weight. Then I suppose one last question here. Okay, there's maybe one more that's just come in here. Is there a feature to specify whether the CNG or LNG is side mounted or top mounted? Okay, like for example, on a refuse truck body. Maybe if you can toggle that to this top view there, John. Okay, so you can move that battery pack to the side and you can just maybe move it to the left side there. That's fine. So that would be a side of chassis. And if you go back to the side view, you can obviously lower it to the chassis height. If you have a garbage truck with a battery pack on top, you can drag that to anywhere on the drawing. So you could mount it right on top of the body. That's definitely possible. Then one other question was about a quick demo on cargo vans. So maybe a typical Ford Transit. John, are you done with this calculation? Could you exit this calculation? Maybe just go to the vehicle selection screen there, the home screen, and we'll just do a quick search on a Ford Transit. You can just reset the filters. Ford Transit 4x2.
No, sorry.
Yeah, and then under type, just select on the drop down there, you can choose pickup truck or van. So that'll limit your options to just say pickup trucks or vans. You can just pick the very first one on the list there. Okay, so a typical cargo van vehicle will already have the integrated body. So you cannot add a body to this vehicle. However, you can modify, for example, the interior of that vehicle with shelving or any other equipment that you want to add there. So as it stands, that vehicle has a payload carrying capacity of 3,300 pounds. but you can now go to equipment, other equipment. You can import your own graphics and add as many interior sort of equipment items as you'd like to add, and obviously see the effect that that'll have on the payload carrying capacity of this vehicle. Maybe if there are any other questions, now would still be an opportunity for you to type that out there, and I'll try and answer it. Otherwise, John still has a few minutes just to wrap up on the slides, and you can then still post a few questions, and I'll just keep glancing across and maybe answer one or two more questions right at the end. Okay, thanks, John.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah, so before I wrap up or go back to the slides, I'll just go through the settings here as well, just briefly. So we saw here before that you can switch between regulations for US states, both state and interstate roads, and Canadian provinces. You can define favorite measurements and organization standards. Here in measurement, you can define your preferred measurement system, metric or imperial, and how much you'd like the dimensions and weights to be incremented by when you click the up and down tickers on the app. In preferences here, you can specify cab dimensions as front axle to back of cab or bumper to back of cab, specify chassis dimensions as cab to axle or wheelbase, and you can specify the body positions as back of cab to the frontmost axle. Over here in reports, you can customize the reports with your own logo. And I'll just quickly pop back to the home screen actually just to explain one or two more things. So in the resources section here, you'll find all the webinar recordings. You'll find useful documents such as the OEM bodybuilder manuals. Explainer videos here, such good examples are like preparing a drawing for import and importing your DXF drawing. And calculations shared with me, you'll find calculations belonging to other users there who have chosen to share with you in the same way that we're going to share with the drafting technician earlier. For privacy reasons, I won't. Martin, have you raised your hand?
Yes, if it's a good time now, there are a few more questions.
Oh yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so there's a good one here on adding multiple payload weights. So if you could maybe just open either your calculation or that transit panel cargo van we had, just to demonstrate adding one or two detailed payload objects. So you can specify as many individual payload items as you like. Again, there you can even use the DXF import feature. So let's say we want to put a couple of boxes, parcels, or even pallets into that cargo van. If you can just demonstrate that there, John, under payload. You can go from payload, simple payload, you toggle that to detailed payload, and we'll just pick a generic payload template item. You can again customize that to your dimensions and weights, and you could copy that item to add multiple items of the same spec, and then you could obviously edit each one individually. You can add as many as you like. You can also look at that in the top view and position your payload laterally across the width of the body. Okay, then there's a question about creating shared files or libraries of vehicles with a team of designers or engineers. That is a feature that we are looking to improve going forward, that it's to make it easier to share calculations with your team. For now, you can just save a calculation and then share. I think, John, you did show that share feature at the top there.
Yeah.
You can share the entire calculation. So you'd first save it, and then you would share it by specifying the email address of your colleague in this case. You can share entire calculations, and you can also share individual items. Maybe that's a good one just to go back to that one of those payload items there, John.
Yeah.
Just select that payload item and click on save, and you'll see You can save an item to either your personal library, which is default, or the team library, which means everybody at your company will be able to see that item. And that'll apply to payload objects, equipment items, and bodies that you add. You can always choose between personal and team library. Then one last question here. Let me see. Is it possible to get a custom chassis specification that is not currently available in the TruckScience library? For example, with a specific wheelbase? Yes, it is. So maybe you, John, you can go back to the home screen and just show the vehicle request feature. So if you don't find a vehicle or the vehicle that you're looking for, you can click on request a vehicles and specify make, model, and some details. We will then get in touch with you to ask you for any specs that you may have for that vehicle, and then we'll add that vehicle for you. Or we can get in touch with the body or the vehicle manufacturer, or source the information from the bodybuilder portals for the applicable manufacturer. The wheelbase, if you need, I mean, the question also goes into customizing the wheelbase. John, did you show the changing of a wheelbase? I can't remember now. You can maybe just open a chassis cab again and just demonstrate changing the wheelbase. So there are so many different wheelbase options, and in some cases we do not add them all, or the manufacturers wouldn't provide specs for each wheelbase option. So you could open a manufacturer specification. That one will be fine. Anyone will be fine. And then make modifications to the wheelbase and the afterframe. So by just clicking on that, in this case, John has got it set up as the CA dimension, or you can change to wheelbase if you prefer to edit the wheelbase, or the CA, whichever is your choice. You can just override the default, increase or decrease the wheelbase and the afterframe. And just remember to adjust the chassis weights for any changes that you make to the wheelbase. It may not be much, but it could be as up to 100 or 200 pounds, and you may want to include that to make it more accurate. What is the estimated time of adding a chassis to the library? It's a good question. So we typically will say that it takes up to 2 weeks to add a vehicle from the time that we have all the specs. But I know our data team is turning around vehicle specs in a week or less than a week even. So somewhere between maybe 3 days and 5 days, depending on the complexity and the amount of information that is available for that vehicle. All right, and then let me see if there's another question here. Let's see, can we expect the box being added to the final form template for engineering sign-off or authentication stamps? Maybe just go to the PDF report there, John. Just want to check. Okay, so can we expect the box being added to the final form? I'm assuming maybe the final report or maybe the final calculation. Now, there is a feature that we are considering for the future, and that is probably coming quite soon. That is to allow you to mark up or annotate the PDF so that you can add your digital signature to the PDF. You can stamp it. You can put an approved stamp onto the drawing to reflect engineering sign-off. I'm just wondering if that answers the question. So is it on the actual PDF that you'd want to make changes, or is it on the calculation itself where you want to maybe do a DXF import to put a box with any specific details? Okay, I think that probably answers all the questions.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
So
I'll just go
I'll
back.
keep an eye on the Q&A here, so if there's anything else, but otherwise, John, I think you can probably carry on.
Perfect. I'll just go back to the home screen here, and I think the only thing we didn't cover here was templates. So if you wanted to play around with like a conceptual vehicle, you can just grab a template here. And just for this purpose, I'll go for a 4x4. Um, so just give it a second to load. The graphic obviously is not as realistic, but there's much greater flexibility in terms of what you can edit. So it might be the best option if you're in a hurry for a vehicle that's not yet in the library. So that's this is probably the last opportunity to ask a question. If anyone did want to ask a question, just before I pop back to my slides. So just double check with you, Martin.
Yeah, that's all good now, John. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. I'll pop back to the slides. Okay, so I know that we covered quite a lot in a short space of time. If you feel that you could still use a personalized demo for yourself or colleagues who weren't able to attend today, I'd be happy to set that up for you. You can do that right away by booking at the bottom of our website, truckscience.com, or you can do it by scanning the QR code right there on the screen. I'll give people a few seconds there if they want to scan that with their phone. Okay, that should be enough. If you would like to find out more about Truck Science, you'll find lots of videos and testimonials on our own website, truckscience.com. We'll be on the NTA Partners booth at Work Truck Week in Indy next week, so make sure to stop by if you're attending. And you can find out more details about all the other trade shows we're attending on our website and exhibiting at. If you're not already using Truck Science, please help yourself to a free trial from our homepage, truckscience.com. I've included a slide on pricing here as the question normally does come up. The professional edition, which is one upfitters would normally go for, costs $1,200 for the year for one user, or say $6,000 for 7 users. The enterprise edition, used by manufacturers who wish to share their product specs with distributors, costs $4,000 for one user, or $8,800 for say 7 users. So that's all for today, folks. I'll end this webinar in just a moment. But before I go, please rate the webinar and leave any questions or comments that you have. If you'd like to receive a quote, just indicate how many users you think you'll need. Other than that, thank you very much for joining us today, and goodbye.